like to welcome everybody to the Romero Hose and Fire Company on Bridge Street, which is the original location of the volunteer company. I'm old, but I'm not that old, so I only know a few stories, but I do know some from my time. What a lot of people don't know about me is that I have a true connection to the volunteer company. My father was a volunteer with the Romero Hose and Fire Company for probably about 30 years. He served under Tony Ludi and at one time was his assistant chief in this department. But that's not all. During that time as a child, my uncle, Harold Ledoux, who's back there somewhere, served in the volunteer fire company. Cecil Lujan, who was my uncle and my padrino, was a volunteer firefighter with his company. Kenneth Modest, my brother, was a volunteer in this fire company. And my brother-in-law, Robert Court, was a volunteer in this fire company. So, plus many other people that my father knew throughout his lifetime as a businessman in this community, that the Ludis and lots of other people provided support to this department over the years. I am very fortunate to call this my starting point within my career. I joined the volunteers when I turned 21 because the whole family did it, so I had to do it. Not with the thought of making it a career, I just wanted to be part of that organization, and it turned out to be very fruitful for me. It's a very special place. As a child, I would come here with my father, climb all over the trucks while he played cards with the men in the back room or shot a game of pool, run up and down the stairs and look out those windows at parades. I mean, I grew up here, as I know that the next speaker will let you know as well. It was more than a fire department. It was a family. It was an organization such as the Elks Club and other organizations that had close-knit ties in those days. There was no casinos, there was no other things to do. You belonged to some type of non-profit organization and gave your time back to the community. And that's what this is about. I really do appreciate the fact that this is going to be saved. I hope that during my career I'll get to see it finished, because I'd love to see this completed before I leave my position in the city at some point. I don't know how long the mayor will keep me, but let me finish this, mayor. Let me try to help finish this. It's a pleasure to speak to you about it. If I was given more time, I could speak to you more and more and more. The stories I've heard, the love of the department, the things that I've seen in here, I could speak for an hour, because it means a lot to me. So I'm not just doing this because, or a part of this, because I work for the fire department. I truly believe that this was a foundation of the West Las Vegas side of town. The east side had company number 1 volunteers who should be recognized as well, and they will be, because this is a firefighters museum. It is not a new Romero Hose and Fire Company museum in the sense that it's only about them. It should be considered a firefighter museum. This vehicle was in service at the east side for many years. It's the oldest vehicle we have saved. It's a 1937 Seagrave. There's one other like it in the state that we're aware of, and it is not a ladder truck. It's a pumper, and I believe it's in Albuquerque. They thought they had the oldest truck saved of the Seagraves like that, and they were surprised by one of our guys in the academy and told, no, we've got one like that. It's been given, it's been parked, it's been saved. It belongs in a museum, and we will finally have a home for it, and that would be wonderful. So we have to always remember our partners on the other side of the river. I think that we were fortunate as a community that we had 2 fire departments, 2 police departments, instead of 1, in the sense that one small department in those days, we had 2, and they helped each other. They recognized in those days that you can't do it alone. They created camaraderie amongst them. It created, just like you have East and West Las Vegas football teams, you had East and West Las Vegas fire departments, and one tried to outdo the other. And what it created was one of the best departments in the state of New Mexico, hands down. They were always recognized in associations and state functions as being a premier fire department in the state. Times have changed. We are where we are today. We have a paid professional fire department, and I say that only in the sense because it's their career, but that does not mean that the men of the professionals in what they did. So we have to always remember that. I know we have a few of the true older volunteers that are honorable members of that department present today, and I'm so grateful that you made the effort to be here today so you could hear that how much we appreciate your service to our community. Before I introduce the next speaker, I have a letter to read to you. I'd like to mention that the Romero Hose and Fire Company had 4 volunteer fire chiefs within the first 105 years of its inception. There's a few fire chiefs after that of the more modern times, but for the first 105 years, 4 individuals led this department. That is amazing. Not to diminish the company number 1 volunteer department on the other side, but they had so many fire chiefs that I could not name them. They changed every year or every other year, constantly rotating, and this department had solid leadership for all those years. So we started out with Eugenio Romero, who was the first volunteer fire chief of this department. There's different stories. One is that he was chosen because he gave the largest donation to start the department. And I just recently read a letter from John Luty's father, a letter in correspondence where he mentioned that the first fire chief was chosen by a hat drawing. So I would assume that that is the correct story behind that. Several businessmen on this side of town recognized the need of the fire department. They all pitched in $100 each, and then they drew a name out of the hat from those contributors, and he was the first fire chief of the department. So that was Mr. Romero. I do not know a lot about Mr. Ilfeld, except that he was the second fire chief in this department, and he was a businessman as well on this side of town. And after that, well, let's just put it this way. In January 28, 1935, this letter was written, well, more like 2 sentences, but nonetheless. Chief and fellow members, I would like to join your organization. If by chance I become a member of the Romero Hose and Fire Company, I will comply with all the rules and regulations and do my duty. Yours sincerely, George Malou, who went on to become the 3rd fire chief at the Romero Hose and Fire Company. And if any of you remember George, he always wore a suit and he always had candy in his pocket. And a cigar. So, see, I mean, there's people here, there's a family connection throughout this community to this department, as you know who I'm talking about. And then the last chief, of within the 100-some years, because I'm not trying to hurt feelings, there's chiefs after Tony. But to my understanding and my belief, Tony Luty was the longest standing chief in that era. So while some of them may have served 20 or 25 years, he served probably 35 years or so. I'm sure they'll mention that, I'm not sure. You know, let's face it, some of us are never the most well-liked or the most, you know, and I'm sure Tony had his critics. But my dad told me, Tony always said he was going to get him a new fire station. And he did. He got that station on Mexico Avenue, and Tony Luty is the one that pushed for that amongst his membership. Of course, he had support and he had to. He can't do it alone. But he visioned it, and he got it done during the consolidation years, and included the east side and the west side got 2 brand new fire trucks for their departments at that time. In 1975, those trucks were delivered to the department, and they were modern trucks compared to what was in service at the time. You know, it was Tony, and I'm sure the chief at the time, that I don't know who he was, and Company 1. I'm sure that they lobbied for those efforts, and they had it done. So, with that, I would like to introduce to you John Luty, who has become a deputy fire marshal of the state of New Mexico, following somewhat in his father's footsteps. The other son, Tony Luty Jr., who is in the audience today, and Tony is a well-known businessman in this community as well. I welcome you. Thank you for coming. John?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I don't know how I can outdo what the Chief just said, but I want to try. I thank everybody for being here today. I told my wife a couple of days ago that I talk all over the state of New Mexico. I talk to politicians, I talked to fire chiefs, many fire chiefs, I talked to a lot of people, and not once have I ever had to write anything down. This is too near to my heart. I had to write something down because I knew that I was probably going to break up a little bit. So bear with me while I read, okay? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank each and every one of you here today for the opening, renovation, and reuse of Romero Fire and Hose Company and the renovating of the building into a museum and offices. I would like to introduce myself. My name is John Ludi. I'm the New Mexico Deputy State Fire Marshal for the Code Enforcement Bureau for the state of New Mexico. I'm one of 7 sons and daughters of Tony and Teresa Ludi. I am the youngest of 7. I would like to thank the City of Las Vegas, Cabinet Secretary Varela, Mayor Ortiz, Chief Modest, and also Main Street de Las Vegas for the hard work and preparation of the Romero Fire and Hose Building. I'm sure there are many others who I haven't mentioned, but I would like to thank you also. There is one person that I would like to thank. That is my beautiful wife, Angela. She's right here. She is very special to me for many reasons, but mainly for putting up with me, which isn't a very easy task at all for those of you who know me. I'd also like to recognize my brother Tony again. Chief recognized him, my brother Tony, my sister Patsy, her better half, Adam, right there. I love you guys. I also like to introduce Lita. She's one of my inspectors here in northeastern New Mexico, Lita Bernal. Our dad was a volunteer firefighter for many years with Romero. What was amazing to me and our dad was he was in the fire department for 41 years, and he was fire chief for 35 of those years. Most of the community doesn't realize, and Chief mentioned it, most of the community doesn't realize that from the inception of Romero Hose and Fire Company in 1882 until when our dad retired in 1992, our dad was the 4th fire chief for Romero in 105 years. That's amazing. I'm honored to be here today. Growing up, I was very lucky as a young man to be able to be around the Romero Fire Hose Company, volunteer firefighters, and their wives. Romero was basically my second home. Any of you that knew my dad, I was known as my dad's shadow. Anybody remember that? I was my dad's, yeah, everybody in the back up. That was my dad's shadow. I was with him almost 24/7. I would go with my dad to fire calls, meetings, firefighters meetings, meetings with the mayor, mayors with the city council, mayors with senators, and mayors with the governor. That's how much I was a shadow. I have fond memories of Romero. As a young man, all the firefighters would treat me as their own. I remember helping wash down the fire trucks, washing and draining the fire hoses right after a fire or after a training, playing pool on a large pool table that seemed like it was a mile long. There were many times I would assist with first aid classes that were given on the 2nd level of the building that is no longer right there. The firemen's annual picnic, which all of the firefighters and their families participated together. The annual firefighters masquerade ball. One of my favorite years was when my mom dressed up as a lion, a tiger, or something. We weren't exactly sure what she was, but it was funny. It was hilarious. And my dad dressed up as half man and half woman that year. And then there was a fireman's ball, which the firefighters would go house to house, sometimes on the fire truck selling tickets. I could go on and go on. But one of the things that stood out to me as a boy, yes, that cool brass fire pole, which I would slide down every time I had a chance. I would even make excuses to slide down that pole. It's still in the building today. I'm not sure when the next program started, but I believe it was in the mid-1960s when my dad came along with the firefighters. At that time, he came up with an idea of having a Christmas party. The party was for special needs children. My dad so loved children, especially the special needs children. This was a party for needy children in Las Vegas, and eventually the party grew. Children would come to the party from the surrounding areas of San Miguel County and Mora. From what I understand, the party started with about 20 children and eventually grew into a Christmas party to a couple of hundred children. been this shaky.
You're just proud, baby.
At first, the firefighters and the family would get together here at Romero and stuff paper bags and apples, oranges, candy, and sometimes a small gift. My dad would sometimes be Santa's helper and dress up in a Santa Claus outfit. My dad's greatest joy was to see the look on the children's face when they saw Santa Claus, and especially when they received that filled paper bag. I'd like to share an interesting story. It's not a fire-related, which happened here at Romero. I believe it was in 1967. I was alive at that time, by the way. I don't remember which firefighter was on duty at the time, but I remember when a call came in advising my dad that there was a bunch of Hell's Angels bikers outside the fire station wanting to stay a couple of nights. I remember my dad stating, "No, tell them to leave." So they left for a while until my dad received another call. I'm not sure who the call came in from, but at that time my dad realized that he had given permission to Peter Fonda and the cast of the movie Easy Rider, which is partly filmed in Las Vegas. So they actually stayed here in the crew. Chief Philomatis and myself were talking one day, and Chief Modest said something to me that really hit home. Chief Modest stated, "There are very few people alive today that know the history of the building, and once you and I are gone, a lot of the history and memories will go with us. I'm proud to have lived and still remember the dedication of the Romero Hose and Fire volunteers. Sorry I'm breaking up, but it means a lot to me." In closing, I would like to thank God to take care of all the fallen firefighters and all the Las Vegas firefighters and the firefighters around the country. May each and every one of you make it home safe to your families from each of the calls that keeps our community